It's very labor intensive. But ultimately, generations from now, we want people to look at our property and be able to say, like, see the blood, sweat, and tears that are fueling, our soil and our plants.
Awesome. Thank you. Joshua, you had business background. So when Morgan was working in farms in New Jersey, you were still working at your other job, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I worked for a Fortune 50 company, so a very large global financial services company. And I went through an executive leadership program. So, we met you. I was working for the same company, but here in Chicago. And the executive leadership program was a rotational opportunity where I did 3 different jobs over 3 different years by design. And then also had formal business education, executive presence, public speaking, negotiating. And it was great. It moved us to New Jersey. It opened up doors that I don't think would have opened if we didn't pursue that opportunity. But there was something, I would say, missing. When I'd talk to Morgan and I'd see her at the end of the day, yes, she was exhausted. Yes, she was covered in soil and sweaty. But there was this joy that it was this glow, and you could tell that, the farming was fulfilling for her.
She wasn't mentally drained. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Physically exhausted, but I think, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was that mental and healthy fulfillment of toiling away in the soil and seeing the fruits of her labor. Something that's often challenging in mental health work. Oftentimes you're treating individuals for something that they're suffering from, and there aren't a lot of cures. Not a lot of people have a mental illness and what I'll call graduate out of it. It's typically something they manage, as opposed to a plant that starts as a seed and grows up. Here's a fruit, and now you have that fruit of your labor, and you can see the end.
So your background, I'm sure, helps a lot with you guys growing as a small farm. If you didn't have that background, what would be the biggest struggle in terms of running it as a business? Because this is what you all do now, right?
Yeah, and I think one, having that security the first 2 years of our business. So the first year we were organized was 2020. It was a pandemic. Morgan actually did some consulting work under the business name for another farm. And that was sort of a business pivot. So you're starting this new farm and boom, here's a pandemic. Nobody saw it coming.
Right.
There are no farmers markets. Sorry, we're not growing anything. And then year 2, Morgan did start growing. And I think from a business perspective, we knew how to set the stage to have a product. So the silver lining for us in the pandemic is we spent the whole year building up infrastructure. I was still working what we would call off farm in that corporate setting. And it provided us with a lot of opportunity to be able to take risks farming and just establish things that I think if you don't have a business background, maybe you jump in the deep end and try and find your floaties. We sort of took it with some floaties on.
Right. Morgan, I know you guys don't have chickens, or you don't sell eggs, do you?
Well, we actually
last time
we didn't have chickens when you were here before.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
but
I don't remember.
that is one addition that we have made to the farm. Actually, is we've got 48 baby chicks that are currently living on pasture in mobile chicken coops that we can drag around. And they have a job here. Their job is to help with pest control. So we have them actually moving in their mobile coops around our annual vegetable beds. And that way they can really help to kind of gobble up some of the pest insects that we have around. And they also eat like the weed seeds that are growing. So they're really, earning their keep around the farm. But those chickens are mostly going to be for meat. So we're growing them to be meat food later. But we do have a couple hens in the mix too. So we'll have eggs as well. In the meantime, we are selling eggs from another local farmer that lives right around the corner from us that has thousands of chickens on pasture. And so that's a partnership that we've actually developed over the last year, where they have an abundance of eggs. So we help them to sell them. If we have an abundance of vegetables, they'll help us to sell those. So I think having partnerships with other small scale farmers is one of the biggest needs really to make a small farm business survive, because you can't do it all necessarily. But there are other people out there that can maybe fill in some of those gaps.
Help each other out. And how great it is that, every animal has its own purpose in nature. They clean out. It reminded me on the 4th of July weekend, we were sitting outside and my 6-year-old daughter, she saw some bats flying. And she's like, Dad, are they gonna, are they gonna be dangerous? Are they gonna drink blood? I'm like, no. If you see them, they are doing a great job eating mosquitoes. They all have a purpose. Speaking of farmers market, actually, I have a question right before that about the eggs. Do we import eggs from China, really?
I don't know.
I heard that. Do you?
That's a great question. I actually don't know. I know that we do have large egg production facilities in our country that oftentimes have a lot of chickens in less square footage than they probably should. And that alone is a challenge that I think small scale farmers are really trying to overcome, because to have a healthy, beautiful flock, you need more space than what many of these mass producers are willing to commit. They'd rather they're trying to squeeze the egg out of the bird instead of giving the bird space to.
You addressed that far more politer than I would have. Yeah, I heard that and I was appalled by, like how come, the big corporate farming ruined everything and still doing a great job of ruining it. And tell me about the farmers market you go to. Where is it? What is it called? What days are you there? How has it been working for you guys?
Yeah, so we currently sell at 2 farmers markets. The first one is the Homewood Farmers Market, and that's every Saturday. Homewood is a south suburb of Chicago. That's the area where Josh grew up. And so that's why we decided to start our farmers market there, because we had a natural market. His whole family lives in town. And so we knew they would support us even if no one else would. But luckily, other people have turned up to the market. So we have a regular following there in Homewood of customers that come to visit us every Saturday. So that market runs from May to October. So we are right in the peak season right now here in July. And we're just starting to bring like some of the summer crops, tomatoes and things. So that will really boost market sales, I think, as we head into like true summer and fall crops. And then our second market is it's called the Gathering Market, and it's at Tulip Tree Gardens, which is another farm in Beecher, Illinois, which is a little bit farther south of Chicago. But this particular market is every Thursday evening, and that's from 4 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
And what's really great about that market, I can let Josh speak to it, but it's at this other farm. And so there's a lot of rural amenities, including chickens and farm dogs and What else they got going on at the gathering?
Yeah, so the great thing about the gathering, as Morgan mentioned, is it's on a farm. They practice regenerative farming, share a lot of the same values we do in terms of repairing the soil. They've got goats and pigs. Their hens sort of run, I'll call it run wild. They're free range hens. They walk around the market. I often have to shoo them away. We have an agreement. If they try